Hi, I'm Rob, and I've been a Christian for over 50 years. My parents are Christians, and they took me to church from a very early age. I learnt an awful lot about God and the Bible, but for quite a few years, it was just knowledge that was in my head. It didn't mean that much to me. One evening, I attended church service, and there was a film showing. It was called A Fact and Faith Films. Now, these films are still available on YouTube even now, and you can still see them. But it made an enormous impact to me. The film was basically a type of early science documentary. Bear in mind, this was in 1967, and film technology was low at the time. We watched it in ancient 16mm video. Sorry, not video, film, with a shocking sound source. But nevertheless, I was fascinated by what it showed, which was the amazing wonder of God's creation. And even though I was 10 years old at the time, I reasoned that if God was so wonderful in his creation, the Bible must be right. And if the Bible was right, then Christ's death on the cross and his rising from the dead so that our sins can be forgiven was all true. I was absolutely amazed by that. I was also amazed by the science. In fact, I studied science at university, and I've taught science and maths for the last 30 odd years. That night I came home from the meeting very excited, and I told my mum all about it, and together we prayed. I asked God to come into my life, to take over, to be my salvation, and to forgive me from all of my sins. Sins? I was 10 years old, for goodness sake. I had no idea what sin was. For the next few years I attended church an awful lot, probably 5 or 6 times a week. I met loads of good friends, just some of which I still have. I learnt a load about God, and it was really cool. It was about this time that I bought my first motorcycle. It was an utter nail. The worst bike I have ever heard of that actually went. After 3 years, just before the MOT was due, which it would have failed, I swapped it for a push bike. I went to college at 18, but very quickly I found that the attractions of campus life were stronger than the attraction of going to church and listening to what I thought at the time was quite boring sermons. Don't get me wrong, I didn't do anything terribly wrong. I didn't kill anybody, steal anything off anybody, but nevertheless I committed what's probably the most terrible sin of all. I took my mind completely off God. In fact, I didn't even think about God or his church for almost a year. I came home from college for a holiday, and I shared with a close friend what I've been doing. The fact that I'd been out of fellowship with God and his people. And together we prayed, and I recommitted my life to Christ. But that was 40 years ago. A lot has happened since then. During the next few years, many years, I did loads of good stuff in church. I ran a house group, I did kids' church, served in the church in quite a few different ways. But I felt there was something slightly missing. About 12 years ago, something very special happened. I happened to be calling round to my brothers for some supper, and I rocked up without even thinking about very much. I certainly wasn't thinking about motorcycles. That had been out of my head for decades. And something very special happened to me. I got out of my car, started to walk the, 10 yards or so to his front door, and then God spoke to me. And he spoke to me in a very specific way. He said, "Rob, get a motorbike." I was amazed and astonished. I went into the house to see my brother. I told him what God had just said to me. He was delighted, as was other people who were there at the same time, because my brother was a keen biker and a member of the Christian Motorcyclists Association. Since then, I've had many motorbikes. I've also increased the number of Christian friends and non-Christian friends. I'm able to attend a great number of motorbike events, which are very secular in nature. I'm able to share my faith with people who don't know Christ. I feel that's very important to me because God's done something very special for me. He's given me a salvation and also a fantastic way of life.